How did we get to be so hated?
Well, there are many odious traits that Americans have that the rest of the world doesn't like. Constant boasting, with not much to boast about. That gets on other people's nerves. The idea that somehow or other the whole world belongs to us. And everybody should do what we tell them to do. You don't really like that.
What we've done, I don't know any example in history such as what the U.S. has done. Other countries evolve into empires, they get more properties, they get more wealth, they get more this, more that. And they have an orderly progression into the future. We went back. We're working in the Stone Age now. Murdering people that we don't know anything about and never will learn because we're too important to read books, so we don't know anything.
The first thing you have to do is get back habeas corpus. You've got to get back the Magna Carta. You've got to get back our legal system. You've got to get back the pillars of the Constitution. And they're gone. Republics don't restore themselves.
There's a group of ex-Reagan conservatives that are waging a campaign exactly along these lines, saying the Constitution must be reclaimed. In fact, they're making more of it than the leadership of the Democratic Party is.
Well, do they have the same Constitution in mind, or do they have something else in mind? One never knows with marginal groups. I think the Reagan people just believe that you make as much money as you can and screw everybody else.
We're going through a phase that England must have gone through in the 14th century. Agincourt around there, where you go abroad to grab some French territories, or the other way around. And this is perverse. Rioting an understatement, but it is very perverse. A highly successful, modernized country with all the wealth on earth at one point, now gone, decides it's going to conquer the Middle East in the interests of democracy. Well, we had a lunatic president called Woodrow Wilson, who was going to make the world safe for democracy. Nobody knew what he meant. He didn't know. He loved the lake poets. It's really about all we know about him. He just liked to go up there and read poetry. And the troops followed and didn't read so much. But there are a lot of white graves.
This gang seems to be, they're certainly talking the talk of wanting to go defend habeas corpus and the Constitution. But more my point is, we're hearing very little of this from the Democratic Party.
Well, people, there's Dennis Kucinich, there are a lot of people, Senator Lay, Congressman Conyers. There are a lot of people who understand the Constitution and understand the risks of dictatorship, because we're right on the edge of it. I tell people, Europeans, they say, what do you think of the regime? And I said, well, what they've done is interesting, symbolic. I said, I was born 80 years ago in a country called the United States of America. And I now live in a homeland. It's an expression we haven't heard since Hitler. Since they don't know anything about language or politics or thought or anything else. They think it's just a wonderful way of explaining the United States defending itself against its numerous inscrutable enemies. They hate us, we don't know why. Well, if we didn't blow up their cities, they might feel more kindly towards us. 2 + 2 is not possible in the United States of Alzheimer's.
What do you see in the next 10, 15 years?
Bankruptcy for the nation, which will put an end to these insane wars. We can't afford one. I know in Washington, the entire Bush gang is longing to reconstitute the army with another 1 million men. They can't find 1 million men. And the American people, although they can be easily tricked, they're not stupid, and they're not enlisting.
Those who've been in more or less running the world for the last 50, 60 years or more, how do they deal with a situation where they might not run the world anymore?
Well, martial law would be the first step that they would take to get back their powers. It's always a good one, always an easy one. They have all sorts of models, they think, in Abraham Lincoln. He certainly ruled with dictatorial powers, but the Constitution allowed him to do that, and he was faced with the dissolution of his country, which he cared a lot about. There's nobody in this administration who knows anything about the United States. They don't know the history. They certainly do not wish the people well. If you ever talk to Republicans privately about this is elected officials. Their opinion of the people, their contempt is so total. And if you're on their side, you're a soft-hearted liberal or you've been taken in.
What do you see as the response coming from the people in the next 10, 15 years?
Well, I think bankruptcy, depression.
How will people respond?
Well, there could be rioting. Certainly when we saw what happened in the late 20s, early 30s. Institutions collapsed, banks collapsed.
The Second World War, for instance, I mean, if America was not involved in that foreign war, Hitler would have prevailed, and that would not have been a good thing.
Well, of course it's not a good thing, but simultaneously, we're not the world's policemen. There's a great phrase around 1939, 1940, around Washington, where I grew up, let the British get their own chestnuts out of the fire. This is what isolationists said. You make a mess in Europe, don't expect us to join you in the mess. And it was just a totally loony period. We had no national interest. Hitler was not a good person. But we didn't know then. How did we know? We knew nothing about his plans for Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, whatever he was up to. Nor was it necessarily our job to be policemen. So the old America, which was based upon minding our own business, realizing our modest place in the world as a mercantile republic, out for business, that was all. But here we are now we have no money left. We're supposed to build up by 1 million men the so-called volunteer army, which it isn't. It's a bribed army. And we're supposed to be doing that. We haven't got the money to pay for them. So we're out of the world empire business. And I say, thank God.
The question I often ask is, are you proud to be an American?
No, I'm ashamed. And every proper American is ashamed of what we've done at Abu Ghraib and what we've done here, there. We kidnap people. I just came from Milan. We'd kidnap somebody and shipped him off in a trunk to Cairo, where he can be tortured at the vice president's pleasure. The vice president is crazy, and the president is, there's a wonderful word, deficiente, as the Italians call it. He's deficient in brains.
You see, the one thing that divides our country from being another militarized republic, it is not only due process of law, but it is also the Posse Comitatus Act of 1875, which the army may not be used in any action against the citizens of the United States. And they just wander and bang, bang, they set fire to the place, burn down more children and mothers and so on. So the coup d'etat comes out of this. They saw their chance. They, Cheney, Bush, they wanted a war. They're oil men. They want a war and they'll get more oil. I mean, they're also extraordinarily stupid. These people don't know anything about anything. And that was the coup d'etat. They seized the state. And from that moment on, they were appointing all the judges. They were doing this, they were doing that. They got rid of Magna Carta. I will not explain what that is a second time. They broke the republic. But you must remember, I know too much about media to be taken in by anything that most people read about Castro. He's got people in prison. Well, yeah, a lot of rich people lost their money and they're very angry, so they exaggerate his crimes. But he never came up with Abu Ghraib. We did that because we were fighting for democracy everywhere.